Hello, everybody, and welcome once again to IGN's News, Games, and More. I am Max Scoville, and I'm joined today by my good friends Michael Swain with the weird hands.
Hey, my articulated hand fits.
Why?
Please.
Why is that there?
My lady friend does custom nails, and this is how you do nails that you're going to send to people because you can't do them in person anymore because of COVID. So you can ship exquisite handcrafted nails and then put them on.
It's still creepy, but I'll allow it. Also joining us, Josh Dew.
Hey, what's up?
Do you have any appendages over there you want to show off on this on your webcam?
I wish.
No.
I got this guy.
That's
there you go.
Wow.
Y'all like that?
Free smells indeed, my friend.
There it is. And then covering his eyes is our wonderful Jonathan Dornbush.
I really like the phrase handcrafted nails. There's just something about that I love.
Got some handcrafted nails here. Myself. Anyway, this is a show where we talk about all the latest and greatest news in the world of video games and movies and other stuff besides that. And if you're just joining us and you haven't been paying attention to the day's news, you might want to not look too closely at the chat, because some of the biggest news of the day is that some spoilers for The Last of Us Part 2 have surfaced on the internet, and you don't want that to happen.
Yes.
Do we know what? How are we managing this? Are we just going to not look at the comments, or?
So yeah, I can at least talk to like how we're operating on IGN. So this morning, our UK team handled this. Our exec editor of news, Joe Scrubbles. But essentially, we put a PSA out there to say like, hey, there seem to be pretty legitimate leaks, because at the end of the day, when this first happened, we didn't really have a sense if Sony or Naughty Dog was going to officially acknowledge it. And we said, hey, these things are out there. We are not pointing to them or going to describe them in detail, because obviously they are not, the game is not out there yet. And this is not from a like full released version of the game that any of us can play. They're out there, but we are not covering them in that sort of detail. And that's not a thing that I think any of us will say in detail what, if we knew any spoilers, may happen.
Oh, now is not the place. This is not the place, and now is not the time. Certainly not us. But it is interesting just working on, I mean, I'm relatively new to the team, and having video games as a new beat, this is the first time it's really eaten into my joy of video games as a hobby, because like Sam Claiborne, IGN OG, said in the morning meeting this morning, like, I have to interact with the wiki guides page, so I'll take one for the team. I will spearhead that project, get all the spoilers so that we can like service our customer. But I sort of had to like feel the acceptance of that same realization at the beginning of this show right now, because my job is to look at the comments, and I'm already unhappy. This is like the first day since I joined 6 months ago that I'm like, I wish I didn't work for IGN today. This is upsetting to me.
Yeah, it was a weird morning to have all of that happening, because it was, not officially acknowledged yet. And there was this confusion, especially once we got to the release date change, which we can get to after that. But Naughty Dog did tweet out later in the day, earlier today, quote, "We know the last few days have been incredibly difficult for you. We feel the same. It's disappointing to see the release and sharing of pre-release footage from development. Do your best to avoid spoilers, and we ask that you don't spoil it for others. The Last of Us Part 2 will be in your hands soon. No matter what you see and hear, the final experience will be worth it." I think it's interesting to note in there them saying pre-release footage. So this is clearly likely a dev build. It's obviously in a pretty complete state, but this isn't necessarily exactly what we'll end up seeing in the final build, maybe in terms of quality or anything like that on an audio-visual level. But yeah.
Yeah, now because I'm not here representing our editorial team, and this is the live talk show, I get to say the scuttlebutt this morning in some corners of the internet that I picked up on was that this could involve disgruntled employee. Is there any like validated editorial weight to that, Jonathan, or is that something that you as an actual journalist would not weigh in on at this time?
No confirmation on that in terms of, at least I haven't. A part of it is it's very hard to dig into that stuff without one, a minefield of spoilers, but two, the number of people talking about the spoilers. It's hard to dig back down to the original bits of it. We have seen that sentiment a lot, that may be one of the sources. And given the like work from home nature, all of us, including Naughty Dog, are in, that is a possibility. But I don't want to say here or there whether that is the case, because we haven't been able to verify that. I will say either way, the release of these things sucks, I think, for a lot of the employees at Naughty Dog. I've seen a lot of people say, a disgruntled employee would want to release this to get back at Naughty Dog because of the crunch culture that we've seen reported, especially by Jason Schreier so much over there. And I think no matter how upset you are with management, rightly so perhaps, it is a bummer to the hundreds of people who have been working on this and excited to have the public see it eventually, now have to deal with people judging their work in this very haphazard, piecemeal, pick and chosen way.
Mm. Now we're kind of bearing the lead here, which is there was a little bit of good news that we do have an actual release date for The Last of Us Part 2, which is something that we should celebrate, because previously they had said it was postponed indefinitely, which is a very scary word that doesn't really give us much definition. But the new release date is June 19th, which is not that bad.
Postponed. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, another question that arises is when they recently announced that it would be postponed, quote, indefinitely at the time, they also announced that they were going to be refunding pre-orders. Do we know whether people got their pre-orders refunded and if they therefore lost their place in the pre-order queue? Or did that plan just get scrapped and rolled back, and if you had it pre-ordered, it is pre-ordered? Does anyone know?
I don't know specifically. I guess it would also depend a little bit on retailers. Like some retailers may have let you keep your pre-order because the product was eventually going to come out, especially brick and mortar stores probably don't want to give up that money they know they're expecting. So we don't know specifically about that stuff. It was like for this brief period, you couldn't pre-order it on the PlayStation Store because it didn't have that release date. There was a bit of time where you couldn't pre-order it there. So I don't know the exact rollout of what will be affected there. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to go from indefinite to 3 weeks.
Yeah, and I just say public service announcement, if you really want the game amidst all the chaos that is our new way of life for now at least, triple check that you have your stuff sorted and you're going to get the game when you want it, because it's coming soon now. That's great news.
Well,
and it's
not that soon. We gotta wait. Like that's the thing. It's like yes, it's June 19th, but that's still like 2 months that I gotta not read comments, and like I work on our social media team, and like we use these comments to get a gauge on what is working, but now it's just like a minefield, and like it's
Max and I are on a weekly PlayStation show where we're gonna have to talk about this week and probably for a few more weeks. So
right, but you don't have to like read the comments necessarily.
We do because we like to engage with that community. But it will be harder to want to do that, at least in the direct comments. It does change the way we are going to want to do our jobs a little bit, which is unfortunate. But definitely not as big of an unfortunate thing as, the Naughty Dog employees who are like, I put work into that cutscene and now half of it is out there, maybe stuff like that.
Yeah, it's tricky. Like, even though their crunch culture got exposed, right? Like, it doesn't seem like that much was like, I don't know, made a big deal of. I don't know. This is like catching the attention of everybody now, though. It's like, if this disgruntled employee put out spoilers because of crunch culture, then like it's only bringing it more into light. I don't know if it's.
It's the lever that they had to pull that would make a big splash. That's true. But I wonder about the optics, even from their point of view, if they're like, I'm standing up for people being crunched. There's like, that's admirable from certain points of view. But I also just feel like it hurt the audience and there's just such a community of, I don't know. I feel like there would be a way to directly prank the people you feel are responsible for for like whatever aspect of the culture you think is indefensible, or register your protest or whatever. I guess I just have a chip on my shoulder. I'm like, but why would you, of all the things you could have done to protest, spoiling the plot for the internet at large is a crappy one in my mind.
Yeah, people do some crappy stuff though sometimes,
Yeah.
There's no denying that.
I blame it on Joker.
Well, Josh, I want to know, because you called it out, as someone who's on the social team, is that like, has a part of your hype just died inside, or like, are you constantly spoiled on every major piece of pop culture? What's the deal with that?
I've been able to avoid it for the most part. Like, I'm not like most of these things people end up reading on Twitter. and I'm not really active on Twitter. And so cutting Twitter out from my life until June 19th is not going to be a big deal for me. But in terms of like my job, yeah, it's a little bit trickier because we considered, turning off comments on posts, but we decided against it just because it was like, people are gonna troll anyway. They're gonna post these leaks, no matter what happens, no matter what posts that we disable commenting for. Yeah, just to go back, when I said I'm blaming it on Joker, I'm blaming it on Joker's philosophy that he just wants to see the world burn, and that's
not
what
the film Joker.
That's what.
Well, maybe a little bit of both, but it's the character of Joker who likes chaos. You know what I mean? And this is a very Joker-esque move of whoever leaked this.
That's exactly. Tony Montero in the chat says, couldn't you just have someone who isn't interested in that game sift through the comments? We do try and play that game when we can. For example, there was recent power rankings where I remember Jonathan didn't host. Josh, you hosted instead because Jonathan didn't want Clone Wars spoilers, if I recall. Yeah. But the problem is we're full of Jokers now. There's a bunch of Jokers. We do these live shows, and in the live shows, there's I remember back in the day, the classic was people running by Harry Potter lines outside bookstores and just yelling, Snape kills Dumbledore, what have you. Now there's people just flooding any comment stream they can find saying, this happens in Last of Us. So, the internet's made that so easy, it's kind of unavoidable. So sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
It's also though worth noting, I think, with that, we are thankfully now, it's not going to be one of those things where we're waiting 6 months to play The Last of Us, and if you do get spoiled, having to figure out what the context of those things are. It did also change the release date for Ghost of Tsushima, which is now July 17th, I believe. That was originally at the end of June. And then we reached out because when they delayed The Last of Us, they also delayed Marvel's Ironman Vr, which granted just a PSVR exclusive, so not as big of an audience, but still a pretty marquee, big name game. And they told us they will have more information on that in the coming weeks. So we don't have a new date for that game yet, but we're supposed to soon, hopefully.
Nice.
I mean, The Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima coming out within a month of each other is going to be quite the summer of gaming, if you ask me.
Mr. Burns Return says 2020 is turning out to be quite the year, and it's only April. And I agree with that sentiment. Or it's interesting. I joined the staff about 6 months ago, and coming in at the end of 2019, a notoriously quiet time for gaming. It's exciting to see stuff start to ramp up a pace, and big games we've been looking forward to for years hit in cadence. It's really, I think it is going to be a big year. I have high hopes for 2020 gaming wise.
One of the first videos I did at IGN this year was it was a listicle that's I think a freelancer put together that was all the ways that video games predicted 2020 and everything they got wrong. And I was like, maybe we should wait till the end of the year to do this. And I think I was like, what's the worst that could happen? And it's it's already so just completely just.
Yeah, what percentage became invalid immediately? 70% ish?
It was so quick. It was so quick that it was just immediately this is not. I mean, the weird part was I was Super Baseball 2020 predicted robots would be playing baseball, and I'm in reality, nobody's playing baseball. Yeah. So anyway, 2020 is a weird year indeed.
Eventful.
All right. Shifting gears here, this is exciting. Just around the corner is May the 4th, the official day of Star Wars, which sounds like May the Force be with you.
No.
If you've got a May the 4th, which is so clever. It's so clever. Also, yesterday was the much less popular Alien Day, which is 426, named after LV-426, the derelict planet on which the xenomorphs are found in those films.
And 2 days before that, it was 420, which is fun to say.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, Star Wars, that's
dates.
Fun.
We love dates. Anybody got other favorite dates?
I like March 10th is Mario Elite or whatever.
That's true.
Yeah,
September
March 10th is a
2.
good one.
But anyway,
September 2?
March 58th is Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days.
The bid is over. Max, please save us.
Okay, so anyway, Rise of Skywalker will be streaming 2 months early on Disney Plus in celebration of May the 4th, which is nice if you haven't seen that film. Maybe, I don't know. I think people are sort of mixed on that one. I saw it twice and I'm good for a while. I don't need to see that. But if now it's the whole Skywalker saga's on there, you can watch it. Something that I'm much more excited about is that they're doing Disney Gallery The Mandalorian, which is an 8-episode documentary series that's going to start streaming also on May the 4th. That is a multi-part show that is going to show behind-the-scenes look at the development of The Mandalorian, which I am dying to check out.
I can't wait for that because so much great practical work went into that show, and that was like part of why it was so exciting to watch week to week. And I thought this originally was just going to be like a one-off special, but I love that they're doing a like full mini series look behind of the series.
Yeah. I have to imagine. Go ahead.
The Mandalorian is probably like the biggest Star Wars thing in a while, even more than Rise of Skywalker, I'd say. And so they have no new Star Wars content coming out on D+. So it's like, let's put out a series on the show that everybody until we can get out the next season.
Yeah, and I feel like the fact that the title Disney Gallery is that seems like a stealth branding of a whole new subset. Like, doesn't that imply I expect more of these? Is my point, because Disney doesn't really leave a corner, like a stone unturned, when it comes to building out an IP. So the fact it's exciting to me, just literally that they have a thing called Disney Gallery : whatever, because there's a bunch of whatevers that I would watch a series like this about.
If they're successful, I'm sure they'll do it for the Marvel Disney Plus shows that are on the way.
Mm-hmm.
That feels
because it feels like DVD extras, which I think kind of went away in a weird way. That we still get like special features on if you buy something digitally, but frequently it's like you'll be like, oh, here's like the movie, and then there's just like 3 hours of bullshit you have to fast forward through at the end, which is literally how they did DVD extras on the tail end of VHS releases. So to have like sort of bonus content as a separate thing you can open up on streaming sites, I'm super down with that.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, I hope it has the footage of Werner Herzog treating the Yoda puppet like a real baby and talking to it.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it better.
I can't wait for all the additional Werner stuff we're going to get from that. But yeah, like Josh, you were saying, they're milking it, and they are, but like it makes sense to capitalize and like double down on the stuff that has been their biggest success. And so I'm excited to see what they do with this format going forward, because I think Disney, as much as they are milking their biggest franchises like Star Wars and Marvel and everything, I don't think we're going to get to a point where there are like 12 Star Wars series in a year. So this is a good way to fill up the time. Not in the short term. There's only like 3 in development.
Yeah, and they've had like D+ for like what, less than a year, and they already put 3 shows in development.
They also keep losing showrunners on half their shows, so we'll see if anything gets made.
It's like a serial killer. They'll keep getting more and more ambitious until society finally brings it to a stop, but we'll see how far that goes. Yeah.
Disney Plus, it's like a serial killer.
It's like but entertaining though, you know?
Yeah.
And it doesn't stop there. There's a bunch of May 4th stuff happening. The of course highly anticipated Clone Wars finale, season 7 finale, will be the same day as well. So they're really piling, and there's going to be apparently a takeover of the site featuring like classic and new concept art from famed Star Wars artists and designers. It's a whole thing. They're doing a whole thing, as you would if you owned that property.
I have an exclusive May the 4th thing I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be going out in my front yard in my Star Wars t-shirt, and I'm going to play the Imperial March on my trombone, which I got to learn how to play in quarantine.
Nice.
Wait,
not really. I wish I did that.
No. When did? Oh, okay. You like?
No, I don't have a trombone. That's like, I would love to be like, I have a trombone. You could be like, may I see it? And I'd be like, absolutely not.
No.
You have to wait for May the 4th.
May the 4th.
You can stand up. Never mind. Go ahead. You had something.
I personally, I am also really excited for this documentary, just because they've like radically changed how these productions are made because of that video screen that they shoot on now. And that's why season 2's already done shooting, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
They snuck in before the COVID shutdowns.
It was made so fast. Like the show had just come out, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're already shooting season 2," and then it was over. We wrapped season 2, and I was like, "That's so quick." And for those who don't know, they have like a video wall screen that almost wraps all the way around, and a ceiling that's a video, and it's all rendered on Unreal Engine. and they could render it in real time, and it's connected to the camera so that when you move the camera, the background will move to make sense as if you're in a real place. And like, I'm sure most of the Mandalorian is shot on that thing, and I wonder how much they actually went outside and went to a location to shoot something.
One of the directors
so
was talking about how the coolest thing about that is that it cuts down on all the time you have to spend location scouting. Where like before it would be like you'd have to go out in the desert and be like, you know, and that all the time it takes to drive someplace, to get a plane and do all that nonsense, which of course is a huge pain in the ass. But if you're just able to render it in real time and be like, camera goes here, it's just, you know, virtual filmmaking basically.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see like that stuff, that technology explained more in detail.
So moving on, if you're a wrestling fan, you got some pretty exciting news today. There's a brand new WWE video game, which is it's called
Go ahead.
It's called WWE Battlegrounds. And people don't seem super crazy, but it's definitely I'm going to use the term arcade style, and I'm using that very generously. It's cartoony. They were going for like a less than realistic approach. Honestly, I'm kind of into it, but I also am not really interested in wrestling, so I can, you know.
I'm not super interested in wrestling, but literally that adjective, that hyphenate, arcade style, made me realize the way that the Mario characters have been used to like tweak sports and types of sports games I would normally enjoy to great games like Mario Strikers, Mario Kart, etc. I want a Mario's and Cast wrestling game now. That's my main takeaway from this story.
That's just Smash Bros.
Smash Bros.
No, but I'm talking about pins and holds and an actual ring.
Oh, okay.
I'll send you my pitch doc after.
Okay. I mean,
afterwards. But yeah, this comes in the wake of obviously 2K releasing a super glitchy iteration of their last installment, and Domino's Pizza style promising that they're going to take an extra long time and continue that series, which is more of an actual like wrestling career sim, and take the time to get it right. So there is not going to be like a WWE 2K traditional wrestling sim next year, but there's going to be this arcade style one instead. Correct?
This year there won't be one.
Yeah.
They're looking like toward the
This
future
year.
for another one.
Right.
But yeah, this will essentially be the WWE game you can buy this year. It's Battlegrounds, which is developed by Saber Interactive, who did NBA Playgrounds, another arcadey sports game that I think met sort of like middling success. I think some people enjoyed it. It did well enough to get a sequel, but I don't think it was reviewed extremely favorably well. But people seem to enjoy it enough for a sequel.
Yeah, I was interested by seeing John Cena fighting an alligator in the trailer, so I might be on board with this one. You know, that seems like a good thrill. But no, there's like some of the comments here. Fiend THX1138 says, "I do not want a wrestling sim, nor have I ever, and I may be alone on this, but I want a wrestling game to go back to WWF No Mercy / SmackDown gameplay. I want fun in my wrestling game." That's kind of my big thing with sports games is like, I don't particularly enjoy sports, but if you turn a sport into a fun video game, I'll get down with it. And so often sports games also aim to be more like simulation driven, which is, I don't know, I guess because I'm not wild into sports, I don't understand the appeal of that. But there's definitely a fondness for like the goofier side of WWE games.
Yeah, like Swain was saying, I love anytime a Mario game is a take on a sports game. I love those, but I don't play the simulation version of them in the same way that, like, when I was a kid, I played every backyard sports game there was and loved those, but then never went on to like play the sim games. And of course, there's an audience for those. Madden and FIFA are some of the best-selling games every year. But I do think there is more of an audience for those arcade games than we've seen like given games in the past few years.
Yeah, I wonder if like WWE fans are like, I don't know, are into this idea. Like, I don't know if they want a sim really bad or if they just want to have fun in a wrestling game. I know this guy did, but there's this other commenter we have, Bugzap89 says, absolutely hilarious that the supposed good news for WWE fans. So it seems like the audience is a little bit split on it. I'm not personally a WWE fan, but this game is actually, I'm more interested in picking up this game than like a WWE sim. I was only interested in picking up 2K20 because of the glitchiness.
Yeah.
And I just wanted it for that hilarity. But this just looks more like accessible and campy and throwing John Cena at an alligator. Like,
But like they made a sequel to Surfs Up, the penguin surfing film that had like half the WWE in it. Like the WWE has cartoon shows. Like they make stuff for kids. It's okay that there's a video game for kids in addition to the, AAA simulation one that'll inevitably exist. But,
It's true, and yet I can see being someone who loves the simulation feeling like you missed a year and you just got a training wheels version while they're like baking their new sim. I think both points of view are valid, which is why it's divisive. For the record, Stephen Petit reviewing for IGN gave NBA 2K Playgrounds 2 an 8, so that bodes pretty well.
Cool.
Seems fun.
Sweet. So shifting gears, one of the big things, the big anniversaries that just happened was Avengers Endgame, which was a good time a year ago before everything was terrible. And the Infinity War writers, Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, unveiled a behind-the-scenes glimpse of Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange, clad in Tony Stark's Iron Man armor during a watch-along of Infinity War. The scene was reportedly shot as an alternative version of the sequence where Iron Man and Spider-Man rescue Strange from the clutches of Thanos' minion, Ebony Maw. I love this kind of stuff. I always love seeing what could have happened in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, especially one like this where it feels like our old coworker Andrew Goldfarb and I, when Infinity War was coming out, used to we both love the MCU and we used to talk all the time of like, what was the writer's room like for this movie where it was like, okay, we have all 60 plus characters we're going to put in here. Who do we put together in which scene? How do we figure out what would be the best chemistry? Like, how many times did they try to put characters together that didn't work or did work, but just didn't make the final cut? There are like so many permutations of what could have been these two movies. So yeah, it's always exciting to see this stuff.
Yeah, those guys are fascinating. I interviewed them at Comic-Con last year, and like that was sort of right after Endgame's big, huge victory lap. And I imagine it's just a huge sigh of relief for them because of this sort of scale of spoilers and like, little moving parts that they're involved with. Where those guys were attached to like laying the groundwork for mid-phase MCU stuff, like little tidbits that would be sprinkled at a post-credit scene in Winter Soldier or what have you. And it's just got to be such a huge weight lifted to be like, and we're done with the big payoff everyone is working towards, and it's someone else's problem to build up the next part,
I just love how months after that movie came out, they would make headlines like almost every week of like, oh, this was we cut it. And everybody would always like just headline their articles like, oh, this could have happened. Oh, and this could have happened. It was great. I mean, we did it, and it was super interesting.
Well, and everyone read it. Yeah, we kept writing those stories. Like I was covering news for us then, of course, and we kept writing them because everyone kept wanting to know.
Yeah,
right.
And now they're like, they had to keep their mouths shut for so long, and now they're just like spilling secrets like nobody's business.
Yeah.
This is neither here nor there, but we've started doing it, and I think it's valuable. People in the comments are asking us to talk about Last of Us Part 2. This is a live show called News, Games, and More, so you've joined us in the midst of the More section. We did talk about Last of Us Part 2 for quite a bit at the top of the show, and even though this is live, you can scroll back on YouTube and start the show from the top if you'd like. That's all. We're supposed to say that occasionally now.
Okay.
Keep those concurrents going,
This is a scene that I wish we could have seen, just because I like the idea of Iron Man and Strange like kind of switching like outfits. Like we haven't in the MCU there's like that trope of like body swapping and stuff in comics, and like characters having fun in each other's powers, and I think that would have been cool to see, especially in Infinity War.
I also think
with two characters that are so different.
Yeah, different, and yet there's a single note on which they resonate, which is that they're both super narcissistic. They both actually to everyone around them. And like you guys were talking about, I think of all the various combinations, the one that really delighted me the most in theaters, I remember, was like, it didn't occur to me that if you got both of them specifically together, they would just constantly be in a dick measuring contest. That is like the most amusing thing to watch. Two of the smartest guys in the multiverse being like, well, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I know, but all right, calm down. Whatever, sport. Why don't you just calm down? I just love how they like at each other. I do think one of the greatest strengths of the wrap up of that phase was almost had like that Simpsons level of you have a cast of thousands. How did you know to cut to the sea captain right now? Like, how did you know it was Iron Man and Doc Strange? Though that was the combo for this. And they're like fighting over who is Spidey's mentor in this scene. I just think their combinations were so smart. And it took me back to my days of arguing on the playground of what your superhero team should be.
Yeah.
Combos is what it's all about. That's what I love about the Pantheon.
Yeah.
I disagree. Yeah, go ahead.
That was one of the strengths of Infinity War for sure. Just seeing
Mm-hmm.
like these team ups that like we only dreamed of would happen on screen, and like that. I think there was a lot of thrill in that.
I was really thinking back to sort of Endgame when it was about to come out. I remember just being the most sort of surprised by Banner Hulk or whatever, like the overly smart human Hulk, which was just. Like we're going to that, we're like, oh, it's so dark. Like half the world is dead. Everything's all messed up. How are they going to get out of this one? And then, first of all, they're just like 5 years later. We're like, huh? And then it was just kind of like, okay, this is going strange new directions. But I think I'm due for a rewatch of those. Those are fun. Anyway,
hey, that's a perfect segue into the part of their recent statement that I don't know that I necessarily agree with, which is the Russo brothers were also saying that they think rescreenings of Infinity War and Endgame would be a good way to get people back in theaters once this is all over.
Yeah, where the hell is that?
It's on the Run of Show, but I just figured if we're going to touch Avengers buzz, we may as well touch both now. And I'm not going to weigh in on whether that's the movie that should bring us back to but Tenet also, we talked about on a recent show, they're standing firm on like the movie's coming out in July if at all possible. And it made me wonder, is there a particular movie or franchise that would be the one to get you guys back? Or will you be fine? Like once we're told you can go to the theaters, will you happily go to the theaters? Or are you going to be hesitant,
Yeah. I think the biggest draw to come back to a theater, like I can't really think of any other movie that. I mean, I'm gonna make clear that I'm not willing to risk my health to go watch Tenet. But if someone like was like gonna make me go to watch the movies with a gun to my head and they said pick any movie you want, I'd be like, fine, I'll watch Tenet.
It's a good way to phrase it. Yeah,
I'm gonna go see Dune in theaters. I don't give a shit. I'm gonna go see that movie.
Oh yeah, no, I changed my answer. It's
like I'll wear a mask and wash my hands the whole time. Like I want to see Dune on a big screen.
You could cosplay with a still suit for Dune and be fine.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that totally works.
AMC, I think since we last talked about that Tenet story, has pretty much said, because we are starting to see, at least in America, some states begin to relax or get rid of their shelter-in-place stories. AMC basically said, we're not going to be reopening until we feel like there is enough safety precautions in place. So I don't know when we're going to see theaters reopen. I do think it would be smart to do a mix of newer movies and old favorites, like old, but like Avengers Endgame, and then even further back, like if Disney put the original Star Wars movies, the original trilogy in theaters. Like I think people would go out to do that for community events.
Which cut, though?
I mean, it'd be great if they released the original cuts. That'd be pretty cool.
What's the thing they added to Gruyo? Oh, yeah.
McClunky, yeah.
But we could be in for a little golden era of re-screenings of big movies that you love to see on the big screen just because they're trying to recoup their losses. I would love that.
So, Jason Christoph in the YouTube chat says drive-ins, y'all missing out, which is like, I would not be surprised at all if we saw the return of drive-ins.
I think we'll see more for sure.
Is there one in this, like, we're all in the San Francisco Bay Area. I don't know where the nearest drive-in is around here.
I think there's one in San Jose.
Okay.
But I mean, like, I feel like there's technology waiting to be sort of implemented for that, where like, what if there's a device that you hook up to the Wi-Fi of a lot or whatever, and your phone does Bluetooth through your car speakers. And I mean, like, a lot of cars have like really good, basically surround sounds in them anyway. And it's like,
well, the last one I went to, it was over radio. You tuned to a certain radio frequency, and that's how you got the audio.
Oh, that rules. Yeah.
It was pretty great.
Yeah,
that sounds awesome.
Well, and I mean, with the ease with which there is now to get projectors and to get screens, like those things are commercial to an extent they weren't, even like a decade ago, but like people pretty commonly have those in their houses. So I could see a lot of people trying to replicate that. And honestly, I'd be totally for it. Yeah.
There is a drive-in theater in Concord, 17 miles away. Let's go, you guys.
Ooh.
Show's over. Let's go.
I would love
Avengers
that. That
Endgame.
actually made me cheer up a lot. I kind of want to do that. Just hanging out with people. Yeah, so let's see. Shift gears. Talking about what's going on this summer. Obviously, we're not going to be going to the movies a whole lot. E3's not happening. Comic-Con's not happening. Gamescom isn't happening in a physical sense. But IGN, what you're watching right now, is going to be trying to tackle that as best as possible. We're having a thing called the Summer of Gaming event in June, which is going to be kind of picking up the pieces of what would have been announced at these other events. And we have announced that we are going to be bringing Cyberpunk 2077 to the show. I don't know in what capacity, but I'm pretty excited about that.
Presumably in an augmented capacity of some kind. Yeah, very happy to see that on the roster. But we have a bunch of other collaborators already lined up, right? I'm scrolling to find it. But
yeah, no, we've got, let's see, Summer of Gaming, we're going to have 2K, Square Enix, Sega, Bandai Namco, Amazon, Google Stadia, Twitter, Devolver Digital, THQ Nordic, and more. People above our pay grade are having very important meetings on a regular basis to try to get more people on the phone and get more games involved with this. And it's just, I don't know, I'm happy to be a part of that.
Very happy. I've been told that I'm allowed to be looped in on the coverage around Devolver Digital, and I'm like, it's the most starstruck I've been since I started here. I'm such a fan of Devolver. I love all the weird crap they do.
Michael, have you been to E3 before? Or are you?
No, this was I was like, everyone who's been at IGN for 10 years is like, you'll get over it. SHA, like, it's not that fun the 10th time. So and I'm still like, I get to go to E3. It's gonna be fun.
The best part of E3, like even up until sort of it getting weird and falling apart, was Devolver Digital's booth, which was basically like they just had like a big barbecue, and they would have people hanging out eating hot dogs, and they'd have like beer kegs, and just like I think they had like I want to say they had like a little pool or something, but they had like air conditioned rooms where you could go in and demo their games, but also people were just chilling out and listening to music, and it was such an opposite energy to the sort of like corporate marketing wall of E3.
They have a real Squidbillies vibe. I like their style, man.
They would get the parking lot outside across from the convention center. It was this funny thing because like E3 in the last year or two has moved to like more experiential stuff, and they would like take up some of the streets near the convention center and all of the surrounding buildings, depending on who was participating. But it's like, Devolver figured this out years ago, and it's a lot of fun.
But all the bigger companies will also be announcing things, one presumes.
Legend of Link 30 says, I was so starved for video game information yesterday that I watched old E3 videos on YouTube. I was really bored. I mean,
you're in a tight spot at that point.
They're like the best conferences are really fun.
Yeah.
Well, the Smash Brothers character reveals are a sight to behold. Like, have you guys seen that one that went viral of the announcer just screaming about Mega Man? Mega Man, the robot hero, returned from time to save us all, Mega Man! There's some delightful, it's fun to see people have fun. Be excited.
No, I mean, we have to like pull, links to B-roll clips for producing a show like this, and occasionally I'll just like get sidetracked and fall down like a weird rabbit hole and find stuff that I hadn't even seen before. I found like there was a cinematic trailer from E3 1997 for the original Metal Gear Solid, which I don't think I'd ever seen before. Wow. And somebody had like cleaned it up a whole lot. It looked like it wasn't in like HD or anything, but it was like surprisingly crisp. And I was like, all right, this is news to me. It's a good surprise. I might play this game in 7th grade.
Video game commercials that aren't gameplay footage are especially old ones. That PlayStation one where the baby gets shot out of a cannon and ages to death and lands in a coffin. It was a weird time.
That was David Lynch, wasn't it?
Is that Lynch?
Lynch directed a bunch of PS3 commercials.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was the Wild West of video game ads.
I just saw the like original Smash Brothers commercial where they're all like people in costumes and they're like dancing in the field, and then they just beat each other up. And I'm like, this is not the Nintendo. Like, Nintendo would never let this fly today. But like, they're literally just kicking each other in the teeth.
I love the weird thing with that is that it all started because I think like Yoshi trips Luigi. Like it's if you trace it back to
yeah.
that, if that commercial is canonical, then that's why they're all fighting.
Yoshi's the instigator. But yeah, CD Projekt Red, latest to join the roster. We don't know what that means. It just means they'll have stuff to talk about, and we'll happily
You'll find out.
serve
during the
that to
summer
you.
of gaming.
It will finally be released on September 17th.
Can't wait to play that
Hopefully,
game.
it doesn't leak before that.
Unless it leaks, yeah.
Okay, so there's apparently still hope for an Office reunion. Something, says showrunner.
Yeah, I can speak to this. I'm writing
go
a
for it.
video right now to go with this. So this will be more coherently laid out. Look for that on IGN.com in the coming days. But basically, there's been a bunch of news tidbits sort of building towards the idea that an Office reunion, there's more hope for an Office reunion than you might think, especially because if you're like me, who is a big Office fan, at the time when Steve Carell left in season 7, you assumed it's because his movie career was getting to a size and scope that he was too big, quote unquote, to do that and would not do that again. And that's just something we sort of projected on him, I think, as fans. Like, oh, I guess he's moved on from that because he's not on it anymore. But we've had this behind-the-scenes book come out where crew members are quoted as saying, no, he really wanted to do those subsequent 2 seasons. There was just like a misunderstanding and personality mismatch that never got worked out. We've recently had John Krasinski talking about how nice it would be to do a reunion. And then last but not least, just yesterday we ran a piece. Laura Prudhomme ran a piece. She interviewed Greg Daniels, Office creator. And in that interview, which you can find the full text of on our site, he said, I'm a little reluctant to open up the characters' endings because we wrote specifically to an ending. But as we hang around, we sometimes think about it. And there is a script that was written for season 1. There was an extra script written that was never shot called Pet Day. So I don't know. Sometimes we joke around about gathering to do Pet Day. And the basic angle here is now that NBC is launching Peacock, we got Space Force in the works, which reunites Greg Daniels with Steve Carell. I think there is now a non-zero likelihood that we will one day see the Office cast reunite to shoot Pet Day, probably as an attempt to draw viewers to Peacock. And it would work on me because I really want to see that. And Parks and Rec did something similar recently.
Yeah, Parks and Rec this week, they shot a basically shelter-in-place episode for raising money for a fundraiser sort of thing that's airing, I think, this week. But HBO Max was looking into getting the Friends reunion, which wouldn't have even been a new episode. It just would have been like the cast coming back together because no one's ever really gotten them to do that much. So they were looking to get that as a way to attract people to HBO Max. So that would make a lot of sense for The Office. I would hope they give that script a touch up because as much as I love that show, I don't think season 1 is particularly the best season.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So
yeah,
wouldn't
I'm
mind
sure they'll like update it to more like what the character, like how familiar we are with the characters now.
Yeah.
That first season they're like not really sure who these characters are.
Yeah.
And then they kind of really get into a groove.
But that's definitely something we're seeing more and more as a trend of cast reunions, whether it's stuff like the Chuck cast recently got together and did a table read of an old episode.
Really?
A lot of NBC shows are getting revivals in that sort of way. People are doing, especially as we're all sheltered in place, a lot of virtual table reads. So especially the Office cast, because I feel like this is the most active the cast as a collective has been. Like John Krasinski is, with A Quiet Place and A Quiet Place 2, plus his new YouTube channel. There's that Office Rewatch podcast. Mindy Kaling obviously has a bunch of projects in development, including a new Netflix show. Like a lot of them are pretty active right now.
Yeah.
I'd much rather see this in like an actual organic, like people who can't go out and work doing something to kind of pass the time and entertain people than I feel like pre-quarantine, this is the kind of thing you'd only see in like an American Express commercial or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
I would take a table read version. It would almost be more charming, and it's not even trying to like be part of the canon. It's just saying here's a lost episode. But it would just be amazing to see the chemistry of that cast in particular interacting again.
Agreed.
I agree with Video Gaming Town. I'd take another 10 seasons, thanks. I really like The Office. And Pet Day is so promising, especially, we don't know, it's like a Star Wars canon, exactly where it would fall, I guess, mid-season 1. But I wish they could insert sort of pets that come to be, like Kevin's dead turtle and or dog that everyone thinks is dead but is actually alive. There's a good history of pet jokes on The Office. Hashtag release pet day. That's all I'm going to say. Let's get that trending.
So earlier on the show, Josh, you said you blamed the Joker's philosophy for things being leaked and whatnot.
Did.
Well, I have great news.
The
Batman,
there's not spoilers?
It's not. The Batman killed the Joker according to the Batwoman show.
Speaking of which, spoilers.
Oh, okay.
Turnabout is fair play. We're about to spoil something about the Joker.
Spoilers in italics, you town fool. You put the. Well, all right.
Spoilers for the Batwoman show. Commencing
Season 1, episode 17 specifically. It's a minor scale spoiler in my mind, but
it is very minor.
But an interesting theory to be drawn from it. And I'll be honest, I am not caught up enough on the actual source material, the Batman comics universe. I had not heard of the Batman Who Laughs. That's a really cool concept. I'm excited.
Mm-hmm.
Did people read this part of the run a show? Does anyone know what
I haven't seen that
about?
part of it.
Oh, okay. Well, the basic gist is, in a recent episode of the Batwoman show, they've hinted at repeatedly that Batman is absent, as they do in a lot of these shows, but exists. And in this episode, season 1, episode 17, they strongly imply that he's sort of outside of Gotham because he killed the Joker and is either laying low or can't handle the guilt or felt that he is no longer the hero we need or whatever, or is ashamed of himself, so he's de-Batmaned himself. But basically, the theory that we ran on the site was that this could be leading to an appearance of the Batman Who Laughs, which is a character from the comics who is a dark multiverse Batman who killed the Joker and then went nuts and is a Joker-Batman mashup. So he's as competent and rich and capable as Batman, but he just wants the world to burn. I think that's a cool villain.
That's a good I like the idea of a superhero turning into a villain through a weird freak accident. That doesn't happen enough. I never got into the DC shows, but I respect the hell out of how ambitious they are. Jonathan, you're really you watch these, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely behind currently, but I watched, especially as they started with Arrow and The Flash and the first few seasons of a lot of them. And I think what's really impressive about them is they, for so long, had so many restrictions put on them. Like, Batman doesn't really get acknowledged in a major way. Like, Bruce Wayne or Batman does not get mentioned, I think, until season 6 of Arrow, because DC proper, when they were dealing with the movie universe, did not want people to get confused between major, basically the main trinity, because obviously the Flash had his own TV show. But there were all these weird restrictions where I think even they never officially outright said it, but during Arrow, they were putting together really cool Suicide Squad stuff, and they were hinting at having Harley Quinn come on the show. And I think they got the voice actress who played Harley Quinn in the Batman animated series to do her voice as a voice cameo, and there was all this cool stuff. And then they killed the Suicide Squad because they were like, we don't want people to think that's the Suicide Squad when we have the movie Suicide Squad happening. And then that movie happened. But
that allegedly ruined that show. Honestly,
it really it ruined a lot of really cool stories.
Sharp downturn.
Yeah. And so it's nice that they're being able to, especially in these last few seasons, wink at stuff. Like, I mean, Gotham wasn't a thing they could say, and now Gotham is the main locale for Batwoman, which is awesome that we're getting that stuff.
I mean, the weird problem is that like the DC TV stuff made the same mistake that Marvel movies did initially, where they were like, we've got these interconnected, characters and stuff, and they farmed them out to different networks so that Supergirl was on, CBS at one point, and Flash was on WB, and then you have Gotham off on Fox, and it's like these characters can't interact in a way that they should. But then I think that's kind of all gone out the window, and now they're.
Well, they leaned into that. That's the whole thing. Like, they had this whole issue with continuity and okay, now we have 2 Flashes. We have a TV Flash and a movie Flash. But then with their recent crossover event, Crisis on Infinite Earths, they just super leaned into every single DC property that they have going on right now, and they just somehow made it all work. And the whole thing about how the Batman Who Laughs is from a dark multiverse version of Batman, that totally fits in with the vibe of the show now, because they've established a multiverse exists, and I think that's the DC super ambitious.
Yeah, the DC TV universe has now said any of these things can exist along each other because there was this infinite Earths, obviously. So I'm glad that they're diving more and more into things that felt like they were taboo for the shows to even lightly reference in the background of a shot. But yeah, that crossover referenced Smallville. It referenced the old Batman movies. It referenced the like early 2000s Birds of Prey series that ran for like half a season.
That they were able to do that. I mean, they had Kevin Conroy playing live action Batman for the first time, right?
Yeah. They had him
rules.
playing. Yeah, they've really leaned into, I think, and especially with changes over at like the DC corporate side of things about who's in charge of the creative, they've leaned into the like, okay, we have so many iterations of so many of these characters and people love different iterations from different mediums and genres and whatever. Let's just lean into that rather than trying to separate and prevent this creativity.
It does make me realize, though, as does, of course, like Spider-Man's complicated journey into the MCU ultimately, that I think one of the secret heroes of the MCU over the last like 15 years or what have you has been the truly impressive shifts they've been able to make on a business and like relationship sense and rights issues sense. Like H. Sarbin comments says, why can't we just get a straight up Batman show? Unbelievable the hoops they jump through to avoid adapting the one thing people want to see. And I would assume that the answer to that is not that they don't realize that you want Batman and would pay for Batman. It's that there's rights issues in place and everything has to be sort of separated out. And I think DC is doing a better and better job, but it's interesting how much Marvel just killed it by being able to quickly cohese all these separate IPs into this existing like pie that's overseen by Sauron eye in the sky, and everything goes smoothly. And of course, Star Wars as a branded universe is following a similar model, and I think DC will get there as well. But it's interesting how much of it comes down to like, we weren't allowed to. Some executive at some point thought that character wouldn't make money anymore, and so we sold it here.
What's really interesting with DC, and I don't want to belabor too much on the like business back end inside baseball stuff, but what's interesting about DC is it's largely within the same company. Like the Marvel stuff was really interesting because Paramount originally owned the rights to distributing some of the movies, and obviously Fox had rights to certain characters, and Universal had the rights to the Hulk, and there's all these like different things and Sony with Spider-Man. With WB, it's like someone at a higher level said, we just don't want Batman to be used up in the TV version, because the idea is if he's in the TV version, people won't go see the movie.
I'll tell you something really interesting. I took a general meeting in LA with the people who like manage the Looney Tunes characters for a project back in the day, and they also run the Looney Tunes in the same way. Like Bugs Bunny can be booked for something, which means like you can't pitch a Bugs Bunny idea because he's appearing in a film in Japan right now. They treat them like their time like a limited resource, with the same idea that there's such a thing as like that icon could be diluted to the point that the money doesn't keep coming back. I don't know if I agree with that philosophy. I'll take me some Batman or Bugs Bunny any day.
I mean, they're doing two Flash things. They had the Flash TV show, and they're still working on the Flash movie.
The Flash isn't Batman to them, though.
That's fair, yeah.
They're very covetous of Batman,
they're very protective of Batman. But yeah, I've heard that about other companies too, where essentially every character, like if they're beloved enough of a group of characters, they treat each character almost as its own franchise.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go. You heard it here.
Real quick, there's a few people in our chat who are asking about Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima. If you missed us talking about it earlier, Last of Us is now June 19th. And Ghost of Tsushima is July 17th. So those both got pushed a little bit, but those are the dates that those are coming out. And don't read the spoilers on the internet because they're out there.
You can hear our full conversation by taking your scrubber thing and starting the episode over if you want.
Yep. Speaking of leaks, the Battlefield 5 final update got leaked. It's Yeah, it's a Winter Creef. It's a epic soldier set was spotted by user Temper Royal, who's previously been a reliable source for data mining stuff. There is a location called the Al Marj encampment that was part of a canceled 5v5 mode known internally as Libya, and this location will be included with the final update. Yeah, so I mean, Battlefield 5 is kind of rolling to a stop. We talked about this last week, but it's like, I think this is kind of like how how current multiplayer games are, where they have like frequently a very long tail of DLC, and if you stick with it, then you pay attention to that and you stay tuned. But if you kind of nope out, it kind of just becomes like noise. But it's also like it's pretty rad. I feel like this fall at some point, Battlefield 5 is going to be $7 on sale, and you're going to get the full game and then like a 2 years worth of DLC on top of that. Like that happened with Battlefront 2 a while back. It was just like crazy to be like, oh, this went from being like $60 and change to like just this big kind of grab bag.
Okay, for the record, I don't know if this is a typo in our run of show or if I'm breaking something that undermines the leak itself, but it's got to be Winter Krieg, because Winter Krieg is a famous German war, and Krieg is the German word for war. It can't be Winter Krieg. Winter Krieg is nothing.
What is Krieg?
Krieg is not anything, according to Google
it.
Translate.
F and G are they're keyboard, so that's very likely a typo. Yeah.
All right. I'm just wondering if that was the leaker's typo or our typo, or I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming it's Winter Krieg, and that's all I have to contribute because I don't.
That definitely makes more sense because
Yes.
Patrick Kreef is a Canadian musician and singer-songwriter, and other than that, I don't have anything to go on there.
Hey, he could be debuting his new album. It could be a Travis Scott scenario, but in Battlefield 5.
Okay, so on the subject of World War II stuff, there was a Wolfenstein board game which raised $600,000 on, was that Kickstarter?
Kickstarter, yes, indeed.
Yeah, I love how Kickstarter has become like, it went from being this thing for like indie video games to being like this wonderful like test bed for like board games and miniature projects.
It's very much for tabletop now. It seems like the bulk of the money goes to tabletop gaming. Yeah.
Yeah, and we see a lot of pretty successful franchises or Kickstarters, but also a lot of famous franchises is what I meant to say. So like a lot of video games have been getting the board game treatment, like Horizon Zero Dawn, Resident Evil. So this feels in line with that.
What kind of style of board game is this?
As someone who just got Gloomhaven, because I ordered it right before quarantine, and now I just look at all the pieces, sadly. Because I don't want to play it online. I want to play it for real. It reminds me a bit of Gloomhaven. It looks like a procedurally generated actual like 3D map where you punch out interlocking pieces, or like your Betrayal at the House on the Hill type game. A lot of cards and a ton of really pretty good looking, although monochrome, miniatures of the different Doom baddies. I'm a big complicated board game fan, so I dug through Reddit a lot and comments on like the rule set, which have leaked and stuff. And it seems a lot of people are hesitant about whether they think the gameplay will really be stellar, who are like board game snobs, but you can't fault them for all the stretch goals and like how much love has gone into crafting the pieces. It looks really slick.
Yeah, they hit their goal already.
Well. Yeah, definitely.
And you also get to fight Mecha Hitler.
Yes.
He's back.
Put that in the new Wolfenstein game too. Like, I want to see that.
Incognito Wizard on Reddit says this looks like one of those games that's more excuse to create a bunch of miniatures than to be an actual game. I don't like board games, but I love miniatures and I like them, and I like making small dioramas with things. And it makes me a little bit annoyed that there isn't an option to just buy miniatures for board games like this on their own. Like obviously it's the bulk of what you're paying for, but there's that Bloodborne board game that was also a Kickstarter darling. I just want those. I want to paint those little monsters. I want to make little figures of them.
Yeah, like no matter how fun the feel like excuses to sell you a lot of minis, but also give you something else in case you just don't want minis.
I mean, I'm even loving the way the doors work on this Doom. So cool, the little plastic doors. Oh, sorry, I'm watching our own show. The B-roll has like, if you approach the door with the right key card, it can slide out of its little plastic holder.
Yeah.
Swaim, I can't have two tabs open on this computer during this show.
Old one-tab Dornbush, they call them.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Dornbush.
Well, we're about winding things down here. This has been one of the most thrilling Mondays in the history of pop culture entertainment news to date.
Whoa. I
Wow.
detect a hint of sarcasm.
A little bit is the smooches. Just to be like, oh yeah. So anyway, friendly reminder: we're going to be doing a live video game summer thing. Anyway, gentlemen, thank you all for joining me. This is a good time. You can find us all on Twitter. I'm Max Scoville. Jonathan Dornbush is JM Dornbush. Josh Dew is Dew Josh, and Swaim, you are
Swaim_corp.
There we go. I love it. Yeah, thank you all for tuning in. If you joined the chat, and I fully don't understand if you did not want to read spoilers and stayed out of there. And please, by all means, continue doing that. It's only 53 days to Last of Us 2, so hang in there. We will be back tomorrow, same time, same place. So join us then, and have a wonderful evening, everybody.
Goodbye.